Good morning. Should Plymouth be resurrected? As a storied brand that was canceled in 2001, and looking at the marketplace today, I want to say yes. But if you don't want to watch this whole video, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the answer is no. I don't think it makes any sense either in the marketplace or for Stellantis. But today, let's dig into that a little bit about why it could, but why it probably won't. Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. And historically speaking, Plymouth was founded as a value brand to compete with Chevy or Ford in the Dodge Chrysler portfolio. I've done a whole video about the history of Plymouth. And sure, they had some interesting cars along the way. Certainly the, Barracuda, things like that. And then near the end, they had the Prowler. But ultimately, they were always that cheaper than Dodge brand. And in the 80s and the 90s, they really leaned into that. And, well, I would say it pigeonholed them. And you bought a Plymouth because you were cheap, or you couldn't afford anything else. And that means that if you kind of liked a Plymouth, you didn't want to be seen that way. So it ended up just dying. Dramatic oversimplifications. I also just did a video about Chrysler and how, probably by pure luck, they've ended up with 4 brands with very distinct identities, strong identities. Dodge is performance. But through mismanagement or terrible planning, Fiat Chrysler and then Stellantis has left at least 2 of those brands pretty empty. Dodge has essentially 2 vehicles, a few more, some EVs coming. Chrysler has a minivan. And when you look at the broader marketplace, I believe in my heart there is a screaming need for a simple, no-frills value brand. I really do. Much like Dacia in Europe. Smaller infotainment screens, more plastic, more cheap, but good performers and great value. And so, on the one hand, I see an amazing opportunity for a whole brand, an American brand, to come in and represent that lower end, less expensive value proposition. And I think it's currently been lost in America. I mean, if you look at Ford and Chevy, for example, they've basically canceled their cars, all the small cars they used to have. Even their smaller sport utilities have disappeared. And it's important because this marketplace we're in right now, it's strong, and it continues to be strong, and there seems to be no limit to the prices that consumers will pay to get the vehicle they want, because they can always finance it. And so every manufacturer is constantly moving up market, moving for that next incremental dollar. And so I believe there's this screaming need for something in our marketplace that I think Plymouth would hit, and hit very strongly, as a matter of fact. Come in with a basic, no-frills value proposition vehicle, not just car. So I think the case for them is strong. And that's where the good news ends, because I don't see it happening. And there's 3 big reasons for it. The first is Stellantis has just too much on their plate. They already have 14 different divisions. They're developing new platforms. They've got to support all of this. Like I said, Chrysler needs some product. Dodge needs some product. Ram really needs probably 2 more trucks. Them coming along And they've been in cost-cutting mode, too. Them coming along and saying, let's start a whole new brand. We'll resurrect this old name. Now you have to set up possibly dealerships, marketing, styling, and all of that's going to be required to kick off a brand new brand when they've got other brands they could already be investing in. I don't see it happening, and would honestly get a lot of pushback internally, much like when GM tried to create Saturn, and the rest of the divisions, especially Chevy, were like, "What? Why not spend the money on us? We're right here." So I think that is probably the biggest single reason. Number two is Stellantis and all of the automakers. They're not there for the consumer. And what I mean by that is they're there to make money. They're there to make money for shareholders. And providing products that people need, that's what they need to do. But you and I can sit around and say, well, we need less expensive cars. We need more frills cars. We see perhaps a coming invasion of the Chinese manufacturers, and they could come in and dramatically undercut what's going on. I have real concerns about some of the Chinese manufacturers coming here and undercutting our brands. So Stellantis could be proactive and push out Plymouth to be that value leader, to head off the Chinese before they ever get here. But if you can sell a vehicle for $30,000, why would you set up a whole brand to sell it for $27,000? That doesn't serve your stakeholders. It might serve society. It might serve the buyer, but it doesn't serve the company because your goal is to make money. So I don't see them doing this from an altruistic point of view. Even though it would be nice to see, I don't see any benefit to the corporate side of it. Number three, and perhaps the most obvious, is if you want a brand that has less expensive vehicles, well, they've kind of already got it in Jeep. Now, I've already done videos about how expensive Jeeps are today, and I stand by that. I think their pricing is ridiculous. Their reliability, as I've heard from many people, is questionable. We could go on and on about the Grand Wagoneer, for example. But if you think about Plymouth and them coming out with a brand that is simpler and less expensive, well, you also have to hit what people actually want. And that is typically sport utilities. You're not going to see an explosion of cars from them. You're going to see small sport utilities and CUVs and, maybe you'd get some innovative fastback designs, but you're still going to end up with the same kind of products that everybody else has because that's what sells in this market. Fully 80% of our sales are trucks and SUVs. So if you're trying to offer it from a value point of view, then, well, that's what Jeep did with the Compass and the Renegade and the Patriot and all those other products. That's what we've already seen. And since they have invested in Jeep for many years and built it up, and they need to kind of clean up that lineup, if they want to offer value products, they'll just pop it under the Jeep brand like they have already. And so ultimately, I want to see Plymouth come back. I really do. I lament some of the names that are gone, and I think Plymouth would be an excellent one for us to have back. I really do. But I just don't see it happening because there could be an argument that they could be set up to head off the Chinese directly. I think there's an argument there. I've heard people talk about, well, they could become the innovative powertrain division. Well, when you're that big of a company, if you develop an innovative powertrain, you're putting it everywhere. because you need to get your money back out of it, not out of one division over in America that you're trying to just establish. So what would their unique selling proposition be other than cheap? I think they could do some experimental stuff. I think they could do some cool stuff. But I think any of those upsides are offset simply by the cost and the management of launching a whole brand new division from nothing, starting it all over again and filling it up with product when they're already struggling to do so. So I'd love to see Plymouth come back, but I just can't see it happening. And that makes me extremely sad that future products, value-oriented, are just going to be stuffed under Jeep again. Because Jeep is kind of locked in by their heritage and the expected styling and expected performance, whereas I think Plymouth could be just a little more freewheeling and providing what consumers, maybe they don't want it now, but when that next downturn comes, if Plymouth existed as I'm describing, it would be in the prime position to capture sales. So, I am out here this morning walking. It is only 72 degrees, but it is about 80% humidity. It's miserable, but I appreciate you being here, y'all. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me know what you think below in the comments. And of course, as I've mentioned, we do have a podcast now. I've taken some of my old history videos, cleaned up the audio, uploaded them podcast. Should be able to find them on your favorite podcast provider under All Cars with John. Because we're brand new, scroll all the way down to the bottom to find us. Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.